You know that music video? Old people at a dinner table staring at him like he's something to be devoured. Everyone called it aesthetic. Nobody asked where the idea came from. I know where it came from. I was in that room. I watched it happen before it ever became a video. And when I tell you what I saw at that table, you are never going to make it to the end of this without checking the room behind you. I've replayed that night in my head about 1,000 times, and I still can't tell you if he was asking me for help or if there was nobody left in there to ask. That's the part that gets me. Not the eyes, not the food. The fact that I had about 4 seconds to decide what I was looking at, and I decided wrong, and then I went back down the stairs and finished my shift. Before I get into it, understand one thing, because everybody assumes the same wrong thing. They weren't a cult, no robes, no chanting, nothing drawn on the floor. If you'd walked into that dining room cold, you'd have thought you'd stumbled into the nicest anniversary party you'd ever seen. They were fans. 13 people who loved him, who'd followed him since he was a kid, who talked about him the way my grandmother talked about Elvis, and they still did what they did. Here's who I was when the phone rang, because you need to know why I said yes. 26. Line cook at a place on Upper King Street in Charleston that closed with 9 hours notice. The owner locked the door on a Tuesday, and we found out from a sign taped to it. 5 months out of full-time work, $1,400 behind on rent, second notice on my door, and a landlord who'd stopped answering texts, which anybody who's rented from a small-time guy knows is worse than yelling. Yelling means he still wants the money. Silence means he's talking to a lawyer. My car had a transmission that slipped coming out a second. The shop wanted $900 to fix it and told me not to drive it on the highway in the meantime. No car meant no gigs. No gigs meant no way out of the hole. I want to be honest with you, because people who tell stories like this always make themselves out to be innocents who got tricked into something. I wasn't tricked. I had a bad feeling, and I priced it. The call came at 10:40 in the morning. Dell owned the catering company, 60 years old, built like a fire hydrant, face like a closed door. I once watched her tell a bride's mother to her face in front of the bride that she was being unreasonable about crab cakes. You working today? No. You are now. We're pulling out at 4. Rural Georgia, 90 miles past Savannah. Overnight, back tomorrow. $1,100 cash in your hand before we leave the lot. I said yes before she finished the sentence. Then I said, wait, 4 today? If you've never done this kind of work, catering runs on lead time. Weeks, minimum, for anything real. You can't source ingredients on short notice. You can't crew up on short notice. 6 hours isn't a booking. 6 hours is an emergency. I asked who the client was. 2 seconds of silence on the line. Then Dell said, don't. The commissary at 11 was chaos, but the wrong kind. Normal kitchen chaos has a rhythm to it. People yelling, moving fast, somebody laughing about how screwed you all are. This was quiet. Everybody moving fast and nobody talking. Dell was on the phone with a supplier, agreeing to a price without arguing. This is a woman who once spent 11 minutes fighting over a $40 delivery fee. She just said, fine, cash, 2 hours. The menu came in at 12:15 as a photograph of a handwritten page. 4 courses, nothing strange on paper, 13 covers. But the order for product was enormous. Protein and produce for something like 300 people. Cases of it for a table of 13. Nobody asked why. Looking back, there were maybe 9 separate moments that day where a normal person stops and asks a question, and not one of us did. We were all doing the same math I'd already done on the phone. The crew was 3 of us. Me, Rosalie, our pastry lead, who talked constantly, her sister, her landlord, some guy from her gym, didn't matter. She filled every silence in a room, and Cliff, older guy, been with Dell longer than I'd been alive practically. 2 kids and a bad knee he never complained about. The steadiest person I ever worked a shift with. 3 of us. For an order size for 300. The envelopes came out at 3:30, actual cash, counted out of a drawer 1 bill at a time. I've worked this industry my whole adult life. I have never seen that before or since. Everything is invoiced. Everything's on a deposit schedule. Nobody hands you $1,100 in 20s out of a drawer in the back office. Folded inside mine, with the money, was a small slip of paper. A phone number. No name, no area code I recognized. Dell said, "Memorize that, then give it back to me." I asked what it was for. In case. Nobody asked in case of what. I looked at that number for maybe 3 seconds, folded it back up, and handed it over without memorizing a single digit, because I was 26 and I was thinking about rent. And it didn't seem like the kind of thing that would ever matter. That is the single worst decision I've ever made. I make it again every night when I close my eyes. We pulled out at 4:10. Cliff drove. I rode up front. Rosalie sat in the back with the racks, talking the whole way about nothing, which I was grateful for. Down Highway 17, then west, off the pavement and into the part of coastal Georgia where the road narrows and the Spanish moss hangs low enough to drag across the roof of a tall van. The directions weren't an address, they were a set of coordinates and one line underneath them. Do not use navigation past the second gate. Second gate, not the gate. Second, like there was a first one we were already supposed to know about. Rosalie asked what we thought a client like this even looked like. Cliff said, "Rich." I didn't answer because we were coming around a long left-hand bend and I was looking at the shoulder of the road. There was a truck pulled halfway into a gravel cut. A catering truck, like ours, bigger. And the men standing at the back of it were holding rifles. One of the men at the back of that truck was looking straight at us. He wasn't alarmed and he wasn't curious. He had the expression of a man counting. A white box truck, no logo, back doors open. 4 men in dark clothes. 2 held rifles low across the body, muzzle down, carried like people who'd been trained and were bored. One had a hand braced on the door frame, leaning into the box, looking down at something on the floor of that truck, not reading a manifest, looking at something. The 4th tracked our windshield the whole way past. Then the trees closed up and it was gone. Did you guys see that? 4 guys with rifles, back of a catering truck. Rosalie, it's Georgia, babe. Everybody's got a gun. Cliff didn't answer for a mile, then flat, without looking over. Don't bring that up again today. Not you're seeing things, not I didn't catch it. I let it go. $1,100 was in my pocket, and Cliff had been doing this since before I could drive. I'd spend 3 years wishing I'd been a different person about that. The first gate was normal, brick pillars, a man with an earpiece who waved us through without a word. The second was solid steel, and beside it stood 2 white columns, 12 feet tall, planted in the dirt, holding nothing up. 2 men searched our load with flashlights. Another took our phones and taped our names to the case lid. Rosalie asked, half joking, if we were catering for the president. No, ma'am. That was it. That no ma'am sat in the van the rest of the way up. And that's when I noticed the cicadas had stopped, not quieter, gone, like a door had shut on it. Y'all hear that? Hear what? Nothing. That's the thing. It's nothing. The house looked 200 years old and wasn't. Too clean, too even, aged on purpose. Moss hanging dead still with no wind at 6 in the evening in August. 30 vehicles on the lawn, 13 guests. The basement kitchen already had 3 other crews in it. 25 people working in total silence, not from rudeness, from instruction, I caught the eye of a woman portioning something into 13 ramekins. She gave me the smallest head shake I've ever seen a person make. I still don't know what she was telling me not to do. A man in a gray suit briefed us. No name, a tablet he checked before every sentence and held too still, like a prop he didn't need. 4 courses, ours was third. No eye contact with guests. He called it the engagement. Cliff asked why anyone would speak to us. He looked at us for the first time. They usually don't. Then, flat, twice. There is a 4th course. You will not lift the cover. You will not touch what is on the tray. It is an offering. Cliff asked who cooked it. It came with the guests. I tried to check that dining room 3 times that night, and I never got through the door. First time, he was already standing there. Not yet. Second time, same spot. And the candlelight caught his shadow on the wall behind him, and it didn't match him. Wider at the top than a suit collar produces, 2 shapes rising off the crown of it. I told myself it was the candle. Third time, I went fast. On purpose. He was already there. And through the door, something heavy was being dragged across the floor in a straight, slow line. It stopped the second I got close. Not yet. Before service, I set place cards. 12 numbered, no names. The 13th, for the head of the table, had a name. And under it, smaller, 1 word. Yum. Then a staffer I'd never seen reached past me, took the card, pocketed it, and set down another. J. I set the 12 in order. I straightened his card, squared it with the charger, the way I'd been trained to. 3 years later, that's the thing I think about most. That I straightened it. Behind me, down the hall, the gray suit man said something to no one. Quiet, almost bored, and I was close enough to catch it. Nearly time to feed. I saw him before I saw any of them. He was already seated at the head of the table when we started staging, younger in person than on a screen, and tired in a way screens don't show. He had a system for it. Each guest who leaned in got the same thing, the half smile, the small nod, a thank you shaped by his mouth before they finished talking. He'd done this 10,000 times. You could see the exhaustion sitting just under the performance, the way you can see a bruise under makeup if the light's right. His hand stayed in his lap. That's the thing I keep coming back to. 13 people leaning toward him, reaching, glowing, and he kept his hands folded in his lap like a kid at a table that wasn't his. They loved him. I want to be clear, it read as love, not menace. 13 old people lit up like it was the best night of their lives. But love that close, that hungry. All pointed at one young man who couldn't lean back any further in his chair. It stopped looking like adoration and started looking like something closing in. We ran 3 courses. Every plate came back untouched. They weren't there for our food. Between the second and third, I was clearing a water station and he caught my eye. Just for a second. And it was the most normal thing that happened all night. The look you trade with another person in the service industry, the tiny flat get me out of here. You give the busser when the table won't stop. A person's look. He saw me see it. Then a guest touched his arm and he turned the smile back on. Every time his plate cleared, a gloved hand came in from off frame and rested at his shoulder once, and was gone before I placed the tray down. I never looked to see whose it was. I don't know why I never looked. Then the 4th course. I carried it up myself, heavier than a plate has any right to be, warm through the tray, a smell coming through the cover that was rich and faintly sweet with iron underneath. I set it in front of the card that said J and stepped back. The cover came off. The room went silent. All 13 leaned in at once. and the candlelight caught in every one of their eyes. 13 little points of fire, wet and bright. What is this? His nose wrinkled, the first fully human thing he'd done all night. The flinch before you decide to be polite. The old man beside him laughed and patted the cloth. Southern delicacy, son. Old family thing. You take a bite and tell me if you like it. He looked at it a long moment, picked up the fork, hesitated a full second where I thought he'd put it down. Then he took the bite. And here's the part I can't get out of my head because it wasn't fast. He chewed, he swallowed, and for a few seconds, he was still him, blinking, a little confused, mouth opening like he was reaching for a word to describe the taste, some small polite thing. You could watch him trying to locate the thought, and then he lost it. Not dramatically. It was like watching someone lose an argument with something inside their own head. The reaching stopped. The confusion smoothed out. Whatever had been working behind his face to find the word just went quiet. Sat down, didn't get back up. Behind him for half a second, his shadow on the wall was wider at the top than his shoulders were. I told myself it was the candle. He set the fork down without being told to, and only then, only after he had, did the 13 begin to eat, all at once, leaning into their own plates, like children who'd been waiting for permission and finally gotten it. He didn't react to any of it anymore. The old woman beside him stroked his sleeve and told him he was the future, their future, and he didn't turn the smile on, didn't nod, just sat among them, upright, still, being adored by 13 people, and gave nothing back. That was scarier than anything with his eyes, and his eyes hadn't even happened yet. I backed out of the room to get more water, and I could still feel the folded look he'd given me sitting in my chest. That flat little, get me out of here. I told myself he was just tired. That famous people get like that. I went back down the stairs, I left him up there. The last time I went up, my exit was blocked in the doorway, so I stood there a few seconds, and I looked up once. He was 9 feet away, against the wall. The first thing I noticed wasn't the eyes. It was what was gone. No performance, no exhaustion, no young man working a room and counting the minutes. All of that had been someone, and the someone wasn't there anymore. What sat behind his face now was just stillness, the kind you get in a house nobody lives in. Then I saw the eyes, and I understood the stillness. Everybody knows that face. It had been on a poster in my little sister's bedroom. Every feature was in the right place. But his eyes were black. The pupil had taken the whole eye, edge to edge, no iris, no white, 2 flat black circles in a face I'd known since I was a kid. And here's what broke me. There were hundreds of candles in that room. Every single guest had 2 little points of fire floating in their eyes. I just watched them catch the light over the 4th course. I looked from face to face, and every one of them had it. His didn't. The light went into his eyes and did not come back out. Then he looked at me. The head turned, slow, smooth. One continuous motion. Not the small adjustments a person's head makes. Something being aimed. His mouth moved. No sound. But the shape it made was a word. People ask me what it was. I've said for 3 years I don't know. That's not true. I know what the word was. I've just never let myself say it out loud. A woman beside him, 90 if she was a day, put her hand on his forearm without looking, without breaking her conversation, and squeezed once. His head turned back to the wall. Same slow speed, like she'd reset him. She finished her joke. People laughed. From the back of the room, I felt something watching him too. Watching the way you watch a pot that's nearly ready. I didn't turn around to see it. I already knew not to. I got downstairs before I threw up into a floor drain, one hand flat on the wall, quiet, because even then, part of me was trying not to make a scene. A man from another crew came around the corner, looked at me, looked at the drain, and kept walking. His face didn't change. That's how I knew he'd seen it before. Cliff met me at the van, shoving pans in unstacked. Cliff, who once made me reload a whole van over nested trays and grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. Come on, we're done. This place is creepy, man. Let's just go. He never asked what I saw, which meant he already knew. On the way out, 4 feet from the far wall, I finally saw the photographs. A young man, 20 maybe, in clothes decades out of style, wearing the smile of someone photographed 10,000 times, who'd stopped meaning it around picture 3,000. Beside him, a girl, different decade, same smile, a brass number under each frame, 1, 2, 3. The last frame in the row was empty, just glass, and a small brass plate underneath it with one word, current. Behind me up the ramp, 2 men wheeled warming cabinets toward the house, strapped shut. Rosalie quit 8 days later and moved to Ohio and has never answered a message since. Dell shut the company down inside a year. When I showed up at her door, she said, "I don't know anything about it," before I got a word out. And then, "They already called about you." Cliff died last spring, straight road, clear afternoon, no skid marks, a detail that wasn't in the article when I reread it. I learned his last name from his obituary. 11 years I worked beside him. I keep thinking he looked at me because I was the only one in that room who still saw a person. And I left. On a clipboard that night, there'd been an ordinary appearance contract with one box checked. Renewal, why? 6 weeks ago, a calendar invite came from that dead company's address. A date in October, coordinates in coastal Georgia, guests 13, staff needed 3, renewal, why? They didn't come to see him. They came to give him to something that eats what a person burns up to be loved that much. And it's still hungry. I was on my back steps when I read it. The cicadas going like a wall. Then they stopped, all at once. I'm $1,400 behind again, and I still haven't declined it.